Welcome to the Real Estate Marketing Implementation Podcast. My name is Jerome Lewis. I'm your host for today. The Real Estate Marketing Implementation Podcast is a podcast where we talk real estate, marketing, tech, business, and leadership. We talk these things for real estate agents, real estate investors, and other real estate entrepreneurs. The Real Estate Marketing Implementation Podcast is a podcast that has two purposes. Purpose number one, to educate and inform our audience and listeners. Purpose number two, Michael, to highlight you, your business, your service, or your product in a way that provides value to you, including market exposure and valuable content creation. With that, we have a very special guest, Michael. I did not get your last name, Michael. What is your last name?
Michael Kramer.
Michael Kramer. Okay. Michael Kramer. When Michael was 21, his father, a deeply respected and by all accounts successful businessman, died broke. This left his mother without enough to even dig his father's grave. Fueled by this tragic event, Michael promised himself that no one in his family would ever feel the pain of being broke again. At 28, Michael started a franchise business where he rose to become the number one operator out of 150 owners, applying the systems and processes that were instrumental in his success as a franchise owner. Michael went on to start, buy, and sell 7 businesses, eventually landing on real estate investing, which is his sole focus today. Today, with his family, he owns and operates 10 real estate-related businesses, including a private equity real estate fund where he helps create generational wealth for investors. Michael is also an Amazon best-selling author of the recently released book, Empathetic Leadership, which he co-authored with world-renowned hostage negotiator Chris Voss. Michael, I'm excited that you're here. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So that was interesting. That's something I was just talking about, that author, Chris Voss. I'm a huge fan of books. I like real estate and books. So I'm glad you are a guest here because you got a little bit of that stuff going on. Actually, not little bit, a lot. Michael, in your own words, share with us your story on how you got into the real estate business. We read your bio. We heard the professional part. Give us your story. Take us through that journey.
Yeah, well, it is all rooted in this kind of pain of seeing the look on her face when, my dad, who was a very well-respected guy, my hero, frankly, and a business owner, Jerome, he owned a business for 30 plus years in our hometown. He had a collision repair shop, a very well-respected, very well-known guy. And when I saw the look on my mom's face of despair, not only was she grieving, but this look of despair, it really did fuel me because I'm thinking to myself, how does a guy with this reputation and this history, and he's a father of 10 children, I'm one of 9 kids, he's a great dad, great husband by all accounts for my mom. How did he die broke? How does that work? Something is wrong, right? And so that was really kind of the first shot in the butt for me, I guess, to get moving and figure it out. But I made a huge mistake, Jerome, because I ended up pursuing business with such a passion and such a exclusive focus. I was obsessed with figuring out how to run a business that it ended up costing me my own marriage. And I've got 4 kids with my ex-wife. And when we divorced, I remember thinking, I did all of this for my family. I did all this to right the wrong of my father. And yet here I am. I failed in my own way. So while he might have failed financially, I failed with my family. And so Free by Real Estate was really born out of those 2 failures, one of my dad's and my own, to fix that for my own family first and to empower other families who have this idea of, I want to change my family's financial future. Real estate's the answer, and they're not sure quite how. And they also don't want to do it alone or have their family suffer by having one of the individuals in the family so laser focus on something that it ends up hurting their family relationships. And so this is the dual mandate we have in our business: create wealth through real estate and to maintain family harmony. In fact, create it in some ways where it doesn't exist now, instead of having one person trying to build a business. So that's our focus today.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Michael. I'm gonna be a little selfish today. I would love to hear about when I was reading your bio. I'm a big fan of books, so I'm just for this one section. I would love to hear about how you got to. I want to hear about your book. I want to hear about how you collaborated with Chris Voss. How that came about. Could you share a little bit about your book and tell us how it came to be with Chris Voss, please?
For sure, yeah. So Chris Voss. Well, let me take a step back. So
Mhm.
the sort of origin story that I just shared about how I got involved in real estate, the
Mhm.
pain of the divorce from my wife really led me to question whether I was good at relationships at all.
Okay.
Because I'd felt like I was so successful in one area of my life, and then to have this dramatic failure at home really hurt me. And I had a good friend of mine give me two different books, Jerome. I'm a book
Mhm.
guy like you. The first book was called Crucial Conversations, and basically the book is sort of a textbook. It's not a fun read because it's really teaching about what a crucial conversation is and how to have a crucial conversation. And I liked it, but I didn't know how to implement it. And then I got introduced to Never Split the Difference, which is a book I'm sure you've read, and many people who are listening to this, I'm sure have read. It's the book that Chris is known for. And as a FBI hostage negotiator, he's writing a business book, and it really struck a chord with me because he taught what he calls tactical empathy. And so what are the tactics to deploy empathy? And now while I say that, it probably sounds really utilitarian and like I'm going to use these tools to take advantage of other people. And the truth is you could do that because once you know these tools, if you don't have this altruistic heart or the desire to truly serve and help others, you can use it for bad things. Um, but I was really trying to turn my life around at that moment and figure out, what inside of me did I miss so that I don't do it again. And so the Never Split the Difference book, light bulbs were going off in my head over and over and over again, Jerome. Now I'll tell you, when I read the book, none of it was like, you read some things and there's so much common sense to it. And it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to do that. This was not that. This was like, I'm not a musician, but the word picture that came to my mind is like I'm learning to play the piano. And my understanding, again, I'm not a musician, so forgive me if I'm insulting you or somebody else that knows music. But my understanding is that when you learn to play piano, you're learning chords. And a lot of times these chords, when they're put together, sound really good. And some would call it music. Well, for me, these chords were the tools that Chris was teaching, some of them being mirroring or labeling or note-oriented questions or um, summarizing, those sorts of tools, the accusation on it. There's a bunch of different tools, and I was thinking of those as the chords, right? And because I'm learning these things, it was very unnatural when I started to deploy these tactics in conversations because I wasn't used to it. Nobody had ever taught me these things. And so it took me a minute. But what was surprising to me was I'm sort of an idealist, okay? And I when I see something or hear something that resonates with me, I try to um, assimilate it, I guess. I try to make it my own. And so I just said, I'm going to practice this, even though I suck at it, and I'm probably going to miss the chords, but I'm going to try it. And I was amazed at how many times I would play one or two chords, and it sounded really good to the listener, not to me. But I've heard somebody when they're learning piano, then they first start playing and they play a chord. I'm like, huh, they nailed that one, right? So then they start to string them together and they play this whole music. Well, learning these tools is a journey, it's a process, and I became obsessed with learning it. I became obsessed with practicing it myself, but I consumed almost all the content, if not all, that I could find on YouTube. I joined their newsletter. I was in contact with these guys often, and one day I got an email which was, "Hey, I'm the um, gosh, what's it called? Agent. I represent Chris, and he's writing a book, and he's looking for folks who to contribute to this book who are inclined to use the Never Split the Difference tools, or tactical empathy tools. Would you be interested in submitting a story?" And of course, I jumped on it. and I submitted a story, and within a few weeks, they got back to me and said, "Hey, we like your story. We want you to have a ghostwriter. We want you to be, part of the book. And if you write a good story with the ghostwriter, then you could make the cut and end up being in the book." And so that's kind of how that all came about. And I really feel fortunate, and I'm grateful um, to be considered to be part of the book, because all of what I wrote about is my experience with the tools Chris taught me. And without him, nobody would be buying this book, right? Because they don't know me, they don't know anything about what I do. But to be able to share a little bit of how he impacted my life and the benefits of tactical empathy has really been an honor.
Thank you. So I appreciate that, and I'm excited to. I told you in the green room, of course, I'm going to ask for a signed copy of your book. We're going to get
You
that
got it.
taken. But I would like to. Your book. The name of it is Empathetic Leadership, and I want to break that out in three ways. Kind of. I want to hear you explain empathy, then I want to hear you explain leadership, and then I want to see you tie it together. But before we do that, why did you name it Empathetic Leadership?
Well, I didn't name it that. Chris's team did, and I am one of several contributing authors. So it's not just Chris Voss and me. There's several other authors that contributed. If you think of it like a collection of stories is
Okay.
really what it is. And so I was a contributing author, but I didn't have the authority to decide what it was called. That was Chris.
Okay. Why did your group what's your insight on why you all named the book Empathetic Leadership?
Well, I think it comes down to influence, right? And anytime you're leading somebody or you're selling something, it's about influence. And
Okay.
so, what's the best way to influence another person? And Chris would argue, and I too now, after learning these tools, that tactical empathy is the most respectful way to influence somebody, and it gives you the best chance for success to reach an outcome that is not only good for both or all parties involved, but one that has a high probability of being implemented and actually executed. And so it's just a very deferential and respectful approach, that where most people are hard driving and saying, here's the feature of my product, here's the benefit of my product, here's why you need to buy it, can I write the order? And that's okay, and it works in many, many cases. But when you're dealing in high stakes conversations where the stakes are high, the opinions vary, both sides see things differently, there's emotion involved. And in our business, real estate, all of these conversations are crucial conversations or high stakes conversations. To really uncover sort of what's driving these negotiations, we've got to use the tactical empathy, with the goal being, Jerome, all of this is so that you can get to a place in this meeting where I have coined the phrase a thin place, where both parties are coming together, and instead of being at odds with each other and debating back and forth, they're now shoulder to shoulder looking at the problem together and solving this problem together. So it allows for what I call a third mind to appear. And oftentimes, out of these collaborative conversations and this very deferential approach, oftentimes the result that comes from that is far better than one or the other party even imagined. In fact, one of the favorite things that Chris says is, never go into a negotiation so sure of what you want that you wouldn't accept something better. And I find this so often in leadership, when you're trying to influence somebody. As a leader, we have in our mind where we want to go, but the
Mhm.
how, what we want to do is often firm, but the how is often more negotiable than we give ourselves permission to think, because the how matters less than the what, as long as it honors what we're trying to get to. And the collaborative approach allows both parties to be part of the how and to come up with a solution that allows that how to be much stickier because they have buy-in to it. And that's why it results in the implementation being much greater and the outcome being much more powerful, because everybody's bought into it.
Thank you for sharing that. So, empathetic leadership, we're going to break that down again. The root word of empathetic is empathy. What's your definition of empathy, Michael?
So my definition of empathy before reading Never Split the Difference and before reading Crucial Conversations was simply to express understanding. Or excuse me, to understand. I'm sorry. To understand, to say to somebody, I understand, right? Now my definition is different. It's what I said at the beginning, which is to express understanding. What's interesting is there is a small nuance difference there, but to the person that you're talking to, it feels dramatically different. If we're having a conversation, Jerome, and I say to you, I understand, that feels okay to you. It doesn't suck. If I say to you, it sounds like you're feeling frustrated and disappointed in the fact that, maybe I didn't communicate well and I, left you out to look silly in the meeting, and I apologize for not doing a better job of communicating with you. If that's what you told me was the challenge, it feels much different when I repeat that back to you. That's the difference between what my old definition of empathy was saying, "I understand," and the new definition of empathy, which is expressing my understanding to you, meaning repeating back or summarizing what you've said, so that when I do say it, you look at me and you say, "That's right. Mike gets me. He understands the fact that I I'm I've been wronged, or I feel whatever you feel." I just made that all up, right? I don't know what you might have come at me with, but for me to be able to, instead of get defensive or to, tell you why you're wrong and try to spin it to make you feel bad, I listen, I ask questions, I summarize and mirror, and if I can then ultimately summarize what you're feeling and thinking, and you say, "That's right," that's when we reach the thin place. Now the conversation starts, because up until the point of that's right moment, you're trying to express what you want me to know, and if I meet that with a defensiveness or I meet that with my own agenda, we're at a loggerhead. We're not gonna get anywhere. So we have to find a that's right moment where we can then start working together on this other issue, whatever it is. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense to me. So I want to address the second word of empathetic leadership, your book. Tell us your definition of leadership.
Yeah, well, I'm a person of faith, Jerome, and so my definition of leadership is servanthood, right? The greatest among you must be servant of all. And so in order for me to lead well, I need to understand, use empathy to understand and express understanding to the people that I'm serving. And then I really have, if I can show them that, then I have a platform in their heart and in their mind that allows me to then ask them, what are the barriers that are impeding you from getting to where we're trying to go, and help remove that, and they'll be honest about it. And I can offer resources that they need to get to where we're trying to go collectively. And so effectively, instead of just getting the head and the hands of the people that are on the team, which oftentimes is where leadership stops, is I have people on my team, they're showing up to work, I have their mind, I have their hands, they're being productive. I want to take it a step further and capture their heart, because I want them to think and act like an owner, and get to what I call a level 3 thinker, where real quickly it's a level 1 is me, level 2 is me and my customer, level 3 is me, my customer, my company. And I say, you got to be a 3 if you want to be with me. So I need you to be thinking about not just you. I want you to think about you. I want you to think about the customer, but I also want you to think about the company. Because if you're stewarding that well, everything you do will be good for you. It'll be good for the customer, and the company will win. And so, as a leader, my job is to find a way through the empathy, expressing understanding, to have a position in their head and heart, to then ask them, what resources do you need, or what's blocking you, provide it for them. And then hopefully through that kind of a dialogue and conversation, have them feel so invested that they consider all three, them, the customer, and our company, in everything they do, which is key.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. In
Yeah.
doing research, inside of your book, you address tactical empathy. You say it's a superpower. Go deeper on that. What makes you say that?
Yeah, it goes back to what we were talking about just a few minutes ago, Jerome, which is this thin place. Because in the moment where, and I don't like the example that Chris uses, but we're in this political cycle now too, where we listen to the candidates speak. There's no dialogue, right? We're not talking to them. We're just listening. But as we hear them with their platitudes and expressing their views, we might in our own heart and mind say, that's right. That's what I want, right? And that's what gives us then this feeling of I now endorse this person. Well, there's science behind that, Jerome, which is that if we get to a place in our minds where we say that's right when someone's expressing something that we believe in, and we see them as an advocate for us, then there's this micro epiphany. There's this moment, and it's actually a neuroscience synapses. I don't know how to explain it, but I've been told that there's a synapses that actually occurs where we say, "Okay, Jerome gets me. He's my kind of a leader because he said something that I believe in, and that's it." You get this "that's right" moment. Well, when you have that "that's right" moment, that's this thin place that I'm talking about, and now we feel a connection. We feel a kindred spirit. And when we have a kindred spirit, that's a superpower that, as we said at the outset, could be used for bad. We can use that kindred spirit to lead somebody down a path that's not altruistic and for the betterment of mankind. Or in the case of politics, hopefully, if there's this aha moment where they say, "Yep, that's right. Kamala's my guy, or Donald's or my gal, or Donald's my guy," whatever it is, they're now enlisted. Their heart's enlisted in this mission, and that's where the superpower comes, is allowing that thin place to exist, but how do I say, not by happenstance, being intentional about getting to it through these tactical empathy tools, so that you can tap into that, which I'm calling the heart connection. Also, I would call it a superpower, because when you have someone's heart, boy, they'll run through walls with you, and that's what we want as leaders.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I have, again, in doing research, USP, I've heard that phrase, unique selling proposition. I've heard it. I've tried to use it. I have a hard time fully understanding it and fully explaining it to people. I think you have similar beliefs. I would like for you to talk about why you have the belief around USP, and I want you to talk about unfair advantage. What's the difference between the two?
Yeah, I love this question. So typically, when we start a business, we are thinking to ourselves, what is it that makes us unique? How do we stand out? USP is a unique selling proposition.
Mhm.
So, what's different about us? What makes us stand out? And so, oftentimes, that is an exercise that we do internally, right? We say, well, I'm going to answer the phone on the first ring, or I'm going to call everybody back that calls me and answer voicemails within 15 minutes, or
Mhm.
I'm gonna have a red building instead of a blue building. Whatever we think is gonna be unique. I like that, actually. I think if that's the standard that people pursue, I think it's good. I think a better standard is to be thinking about it through this, in the term is a little bit crass, but the reason I like it, is because of that. It's a little stickier, it's easier to remember, which is an unfair advantage. An unfair advantage can have this negative connotation of, "I have an unfair advantage, so I can take advantage of you." That's not at all the case if you understand how it works. So, instead of in a USP thinking, "What do I need to do to be better?" You turn your perspective and you start asking the client, you start asking the world that you're serving, really 4 questions. Well, I'm sorry, that's not true. You're filtering those 4 questions through a 4-part framework. But the questions are, what do you love? What do you hate? And, if you had a magic wand, what would you do differently? And as you're listening to those clients, and these are prospective clients, or they could be, for me, it's a couple of different audiences. It's investors. So when I'm talking to an investor, I'm saying, what do you love about investing? What do you hate about investing? And if you had a magic wand, what would you change about investing in real estate? I also have an audience which is lenders, bankers. So I ask them, what do you love about it? related to dealing with guys like me. What do you hate about it if you had a magic wand? And what I'm doing then is I'm filtering those answers through a 4-part framework. And this is from the Blue Ocean Strategy. Have you read that book, Jerome?
I have not.
Great book. Highly recommend it. The Blue Ocean Strategy is this idea, briefly, that we all operate in, or not all, many of us operate in an industry that is a red ocean strategy, meaning there's a lot of competitors, a lot of sharks, and so the water's red. You want to get into a blue ocean strategy where you don't have all the competition, and that's where the unfair advantage comes in. So if you're asking yourself, what do we do differently from your perspective? That's a red ocean strategy. If you're asking yourself, what do we do differently from your client's perspective, now you're starting to think blue ocean, because now you're starting to think about what they're thinking about. So then the 4-part filter is, what do you eliminate based on what they're saying? What can you eliminate? What can you reduce? Because some things you can't eliminate, but you can make easier, a reduction. What can you increase? And what can you create? So out of what do you love, what do you hate, and what's your magic wand solution, you can use that 4-part framework and come up with things that then will set you apart, not in your mind, but in your client's mind. And the goal with that, Jerome, is we want the clients to feel foolish for considering anyone else, regardless of money. So how do I know if they feel foolish? Well, I have to ask them, what is it that's driving you? What do you hate about it? What do you love about it? What would your magic wand be? And if you can capture that and use that 4-part framework, you'll develop what I call an unfair advantage. And what we do is we market that as the Freed by Real Estate way instead of the unfair advantage, because it doesn't sound nice. But the Freed by Real Estate way, the three audiences are, our brokers that we deal with. How do we make them feel foolish for considering sending someone else a deal before they send it to us? Then we have sellers of the actual assets. How do we make the sellers feel foolish for considering selling to anyone else before they talk to us? And then we have our investors. How do we make the investors feel foolish for considering investing anywhere else before they talk to us? Out of that comes our Freed by Real Estate way and our unfair advantage. And I think that's why it kicks the USP's butt, because the USP is what I think, and the unfair advantage is what my customers, what my clients have told me they want. And so if I give them what they want, the odds of them coming to me go way, way up.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. In most cases, well, you were explaining your story at one point where you were building the businesses, you sacrificed some of your family, but then you came back and you were able to make it work. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, some people struggle with that. It's either family or business. How do you make that work?
Yeah, this is tough, Jerome, because I admittedly failed miserably here first. And it was only through significant chin music that I was able to kind of wake up and decide that I was architecting a life that I wasn't proud of. And I wanted to be a different kind of architect. And it took some time and some learning, um, and reflection, of course, to assess that. But now the way it manifests is we are all about family and all about investing as family. So to give you some perspective, in our own business, Free by Real Estate, we have 12 family members that work full time in the business. I've got 4 children. My 3 of the 4 work full time in the business. My wife, um, my sister-in-law, a couple of brother-in-laws. I mean, it's truly a family operation. And the reason we do that is twofold. One is we know, like, and trust family, right? But they're permanent relationships also. So they're treated differently than a traditional employee would be, simply because we can't fire them. I mean, we could, but then we have to go to Thanksgiving together, right? And so it makes the will that we have to work through challenges way, way more. We have more will, we have more stamina to deal with challenges together because we're family. The way that manifests then for us is we have family that is learning about a business that's a sizable business. We have 400 cash flowing rentals that we own without investors. We have another 1,000 that we own with investors. And so I'm not going to be here forever. And the one thing that's for sure, Jerome, is legacy is not optional. When I'm gone, my family is going to reflect on what I've left them. And they're going to say, man, dad did an amazing job providing all these assets, or grandpa or whoever it is did a great job of providing all these assets. But if I didn't do a good job of making sure my family knew what they were getting, one, secondly, knew how to operate it and maintain it, two, and thirdly, knew how to grow and exponentially make it bigger, then I have failed as a legacy of family harmony. Because then what's going to happen is I'm going to hand them this portfolio of whatever it is, millions of dollars, and they're going to look at each other and say, what are we going to do with this? And the odds of them working collaboratively to keep it together and to grow it go way, way down unless I'm intentional now about teaching them how to do this as a family, how to participate in the business, and how to grow it. So, how does that manifest then with our investors? When we talk to our investors, we have actually, I don't know what the number is, several different ways. One is we have a happy hour every Thursday for new investors. When they come to the happy hour, we're not going to the bar with one person getting drunk and showing up late for dinner. We're having the entire family come. We happen to be blessed to live on a lake. And so during the summer, the kids are swimming, we're going on the boat, they're fishing, the parents, everybody's involved. We also have a real estate meetup, which is for families. Oftentimes when you go to a real estate meetup, you see an individual who represents a family, but their family is not involved. So we're very intentional about that. We have a family mastermind for real estate investing. So those that are involved and want to know how to max out their family involvement, we have a mastermind for that. We have one-on-one coaching. We also have the ability for families to invest right alongside us in the deals that we do. And we also have a lending business that allows families who are trying to get started and don't want to be part of our ecosystem when it comes to investing. They just need capital to start their own. We've got capital to help them do that. As long as it's family focused and they're allowing both of these dual mandates to exist, make and create wealth and maintain family harmony, that's our kind of people. So it's a big deal to us to have both of those working together. It's not easy, but that's our sole focus is to have both.
Thank you for sharing that. You mentioned your investors, and one of the things that I know you help them do is get infinite returns. Some people may have never heard of that idea or that concept. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's sort of a crazy aha moment in real estate when you see what an infinite return is. Basically, what it means is that well, let me take a step back. Our business model is value add. Okay, so we're buying properties that are under market value. And the reason they're under market value is either there's a physical problem with the property, maybe it's never been maintained, and the kitchen and bath is from 1975 and never had any work done on it, or it could be that the tenant base is bad and they've mismanaged the property, or it could be both, right? Those are the properties we look for. We like to buy those at below market value, meaning the market is here and this one is here. And the reason it is because we have, you know, a dilapidated property and we have a poor tenant base, so raising the rents is difficult. That's a prime target for us. So our goal is to buy, we make the money when we buy below market, force appreciation through investments in capital improvements and management upgrades. So we have better tenants, which forces the value up. Okay. So once the value is raised, we have this equity sitting there in appreciation. And when we go to a lender on these multifamily assets, lenders are lending based on what's known as NOI, net operating income. The business is valued based on how much it produces. It's not a comparable approach like a single family house is, where they're comparing one house to the next. So if we can force that appreciation by increasing the NOI through those methods I just mentioned, now the asset's worth more. And if we do a good enough job, there's a scenario where we can get enough capital at the refi time to pay off the original loan and all the equity that we put in and have a net zero basis of our own capital. In other words, none of our own money in the deal anymore because we forced the appreciation and the bank took out, you know, the first position on the original loan and all the equity that we put in. So we're paid back completely and we still own the asset. So effectively, we own the asset with no money. It took a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of effort, but we own it with none of our own money and it still cash flows. That's called an infinite return. You do a couple of those and that's life changing, Jerome, because now you can recycle the money. Once you've cashed out and refied, you pull the cash out and you have this nest egg, go deploy it again on the next deal. And it's a rinse and repeat cycle, which is super powerful.
Thank you for sharing that. You have people out there like you, me, some of our other guests, where this is their business full time. They do real estate investing. They understand all the techno jargon, how real estate works, the returns. They know how to analyze properties. And then you have another camp of people that just want to be involved in real estate some way, somehow. What kind of advice would you give those people?
Yeah, such a great point, Jerome, because I think what many people, and we've dealt with, I don't know, thousands of people over the years that have said, "Hey, I want to get involved in real estate." So many of them think that owning real estate is as simple as buying a house or buying an apartment. What
Mhm.
they don't recognize is that it's a business. And if they're not prepared to run the business, they really shouldn't be buying real estate on their own to be running it as a business because it's going to not give them more time freedom. It's another requirement on their time, right? So they have to market for tenants and employees. They have to meet tenants and sell the product or rent them out, get leases signed. They have to deliver maintenance and regular repairs to the property. They have to collect the rents. They have to, you know, do their taxes and their bookkeeping. They have to decide if they're going to level up the property or maintain it. There's all kinds of things that they have to do. And more often than not, Jerome, you've probably seen it too. Folks will buy a handful of small properties and they'll realize after a year or two, this is taking way more time than it's worth because the cash flow is so slim on a small portfolio if you're using debt, right? And if you're using leverage, which most people do. Most people don't go out and pay cash for properties, which is a little different scenario. But my advice to people is if you want to get into real estate and you don't want the time requirements that running a business um, requires, then I would definitely suggest looking at a syndication or a fund model similar to what we have with Freed by Real Estate, where you're still an owner, you still have all of the benefits of ownership, appreciation of the asset going up in value, especially if we're forcing it through our strategies I mentioned earlier. You have depreciation, which is a wonderful thing for reducing your taxable income, and you have cash flow. And so if the property's performing, you have cash flow and you're getting quarterly distributions on top of all of that. So it's really, really difficult to do that on your own unless you're at scale and you're willing to run a business. So if you have the appetite to run a business, I highly recommend doing it on your own. Just know that there's, you know, a lot to getting it going, and it takes a team or it takes a very patient family to do it together because it's going to be a lot of work for very little money. If you don't want that time commitment, then finding an operator like me who does it full time every day and has a rinse and repeat model, that's where you want to go.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. I have something to share with you out online. Someone reached out to me. They want to lend some money. I'll share that with you online.
Yeah, that'd be
Um,
great. Thank you.
I asked you this indirectly at the beginning of our conversation because I got excited about Chris Voss. He had a book, but tell us how working with Chris Voss has influenced you. That's a more direct question than what I asked earlier.
Yeah, so it's amazing because I learned I've had the pleasure of being with Chris all of about, I don't know, probably 4 hours. So it's not a lot of time. Um, what I'll tell you is he is one of us, Jerome. I mean, he would sit and talk to us the same conversation that you and I are having. He's very approachable. He practices what he preaches, and that really has affected me in a way of like, there's a saying, "Don't meet your heroes," right? Because they'll let you down. Chris hasn't. He's been gracious, kind. He's a Midwestern guy. He's from Iowa. I'm from Nebraska, and so I don't know if there's just comfort in that, I guess. But he also practices what he preaches. He mirrors, he labels, and after you've done this for a while, Jerome, it is the most respectful way to have a conversation, and it feels very collaborative. And so it just was really reassuring to me and underscored for me the importance of following through on the tools that he's taught me.
Excellent. Thank you. Michael, how can we learn more about you online? I want you to give it to us in two ways. Number one, I want you to think about the investors and people that want to get involved in investing. And then number two, for people that want to learn more about like some of your leadership, your book, I want you to let them know how they can find out more information.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you for that, Jerome. I appreciate it. So, um, let me say this first. I think, investing in real estate is difficult, and you add a family dynamic, trying to have family harmony, and it makes it in some cases almost untenable, because oftentimes there's somebody in the family that really wants to pursue something, and there's somebody in the family who's more secure minded and not wanting to take risks, whether it's time or money. And so there's this disharmony that's existing. And so I really have, and it doesn't need to be that way. We created Freed by Real Estate to help solve that. Okay. And so I have really two suggestions. One is a small, simple suggestion. If there's a family listening that has an interest in getting into real estate but doesn't really know where to start, and you don't want to get obligated by talking to somebody like me and try to have me sell you on joining us. You just want to have some time and think and process. Well, I created a course. It's a 9-part action guide. It's a nine-part course. It's all free. It's videos and discussions from the beginning of what is real estate investing all the way through how to make your first investment. For the families who are considering real estate, start with that course. It's a 9-part. You can listen to it and watch it as a family. It'll walk you through all of the things, and you can have a discussion then. What do you like about real estate? What are the things you're concerned about? Because there's no bias in this. It's just straightforward. Here's how it works. Okay. And that's absolutely free. So I encourage any family that wants to learn about real estate to sign up for the course. And we're not going to bug you or hassle you about doing other things. It's all up to you, but that's a free resource that will help your family start a conversation. Second is for those that are more of action takers, people that are, hey, I want to get involved. Maybe you want to come and join a happy hour and get to know us, or maybe join the mastermind or get involved in coaching, or you want to put some money in a deal. Reach out to us directly on freedbyrealestate.com. That's our business website, and one of our investment advisors will help you out. Investor relations folks, they're great people. It's a no stakes conversation, just learning about you, understanding what it is that you're about, and seeing if there's a fit. And we are very, very strict with who we work with, because we don't want to have people come in that are not family oriented, that are not trying to, the dual mandate, right? Create wealth and family harmony. And then if somebody wants a more personal connection with me, I have a personal website called realmichaelkramer.com. I'm also active on Facebook. So that's where I would start. And I think if although it is hard, Jerome, although it is difficult to invest, if it's done right and if you do it together, it can be great.
Thank you, Michael. This has been excellent. I appreciate your time today. If you could close us out with one word, no explanation, what word would you choose?
Empathy.
Empathy. I knew it. I set it up. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time today. I'm going to wrap us up. I want you to sit here. We'll catch up in the green room. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you, Jerome. I enjoyed it.